Uber, the popular taxi app which many of us use. But how safe should we feel when entering a stranger's car? Number 1. My grandfather was always a man who I loved and respected. I spent a lot of time with him as a child, and when he passed away very suddenly a few years ago, the whole family was in shock. None of us ever expected it, which made it all the harder. This story happened after the wake, which for those of you who don't know, is the party which you have after the funeral. As you can imagine, it was a really emotional time for me. My cousin and I were drinking, and probably ended up drinking a lot more than we should have, and I was finding a lot more solace in my drink than I was with her or in anyone else's company. My parents had left early on, but we didn't live very far away, and they were fine with me arriving home after the party ended. It got to around 1:30 AM. I was drunk, but still aware enough of what was going on to realise that I should probably be heading home. Even though people were still talking, I felt it best to leave, so I grabbed my phone and requested an Uber to come and collect me. After about 5 minutes, the Uber arrived. I quickly said goodbye to everyone and got in. The driver was a pretty ordinary looking Indian guy, with dark hair and glasses, who greeted me and asked me where I was going, as in my drunken state I hadn't actually entered a destination. We punched it in and were on our way. As we were driving, he kept asking me questions, like my age, why I was drinking so late, and why I was going home alone. I told him that I was 18, which was a lie, as I was only 16 at the time, but my teenage brain was under the impression that I could get into trouble if I let on that I was underage. I said that I was leaving a funeral and wanted to dull the pain, and I purposefully did not answer the last question. Then he asked me a question that started to raise a red flag. He asked if anyone was going to be home to open the door for me or to see me to bed safely. I tried to stay positive, thinking that this dude was just a good Samaritan wanting to know that I would be safe. I just said that everyone was home and likely asleep, but it didn't really matter as I was often a rebel and came in late and it wasn't a problem. However, in retrospect, I probably should have just said that there was someone waiting for me home upon my return. Around halfway through the journey, the driver drove past a turn that he was meant to be taking. I told him, and he replied that this way would be much quicker, as he didn't want to waste my time getting home. Wrong turn after wrong turn, and he used the same excuse every time. This way is much quicker, don't worry about it. He went down an alley near a closed down theatre and a car dealership, which was also shut. I told him that he must be confused because it was no way near my house. And then the car stopped slowly, and I was becoming very scared and anxious. I asked what's wrong, and he put his arm around me. He told me that he could not focus on the road because of how distracting I was. He then leaned in for a kiss, but I blocked him off with my hand and asked him what he was doing. Maybe I was giving him mixed signals, although I really don't know how. Keeping one hand on my shoulder, he grabbed my leg. And this is where I was starting to get serious creeper vibes. He then unzipped his trousers and presented himself to me. I went from thinking he was just a regular guy who'd been receiving mixed signals to a full-blown rapist in seconds. He began to feel me up, my chest, my thighs, and I honestly had no idea what to do at this point. So many thoughts were flashing through my mind. I was intoxicated and had no idea where I was, against a man who was over twice my age and could easily overpower me. Should I do what he wants, or should I try to escape? I looked at him, and at that moment I genuinely believed that if I tried to run, he would kill me. I made a snap judgment and tried to go along with it. I pretended that it was all fine, and that what he was doing wasn't rape, and that I was not underage. I started to feel him up and kiss him a few times, whilst trying to think of what I could possibly do to get out of this situation. And luckily, before it could get anywhere else, he got a call. He told me that he needed to answer it and that we'd have to do this another time. I said okay, and he dropped me off at home. I haven't told anyone and don't plan on doing so. I haven't used an Uber since, and I'm just glad it didn't go anywhere. Whoever was on the other side of that phone call, I owe you my life. Number 2. I don't drink as a general rule, but once a month or so, I'll go out with my friends and binge. My friends and I had a great night at the bar in the city, and then they left. I was chatting up a cute guy, so I decided to stay. We went back to his place and did the deed, and a few hours later I was ready to head home. So I called an Uber to pick me up. I don't know where I am exactly. I know the city I'm in, but not my exact location. So I ordered the Uber, but it's taking forever. Requesting. Pretty soon, a car pulls up. I drunkenly mumble something like, "Oh, is this the Uber?" and hop in. Mistake. Ubers are apparently supposed to have some kind of marking on the vehicle. The guy pulls away and starts driving. We're chatting and I'm fumbling for a cigarette. And the next thing I notice is that we're heading on the highway, but in the opposite direction of where I thought we needed to drive. And we're going at a solid 90 miles per hour. Then I get a call from my Uber driver. He's there and I'm not, because I'm in a car with a nutcase. I start texting my friend frantically, counting off the mile markers for her, and then I realise that that's going to do jack, because she's probably drunk too. So I call 911, but realise that this guy is crazy. He's refusing to let me out the car, so I've got to do it on the sly. It had been 40 minutes now and I was terrified. I didn't know where I was and I didn't know who I was with. We're driving now at over 100 miles an hour, weaving in and out of traffic. He was trying to get me to hang up my phone call, whilst also trying to smoke pot, and I didn't want to do anything that might provoke a violent reaction from him. So I started chatting to the 911 dispatcher as if she was my friend, praying that she would catch on. "Hey girl, it's me. Yeah, I'm with someone right now. We're driving past Highway Exit 9. No, sweetie, it's not my Uber. I thought it was, but it's not. It's a shame that you can't come and meet me and bring your friends." Thank sweet baby Jesus the operator catches on. She gets me to stay on the phone while she sends the cops, and we develop a code. If I see a cop, I'm supposed to casually put my hand out the window, which looks like a semi-normal thing because I'm smoking a cigarette. We pull into some random little housing complex, and he busts out some powder and forms 2 lines. I now have a confirmation that he is doing drugs, which means he's probably emotionally volatile. I relay this to the operator in code. "Oh girl, I wish you were here right now. This guy just busted out the coke, you'd love it. He's taking a really big bump. Man after my own heart." Pretty soon I can see the lights from the cop car, so I start waving my hand out the window. At this point, I don't even care if he's onto me or not. I don't know if he has a weapon, but I slump down on my seat just in case things get too hot. The cops surround us and get him out the car, and then, once it's safe, they get me out as well. They whisk me to the hospital for drug tests and evaluations and all those kind of things, and that's where my story ends. But on my way to the hospital, I'm explaining all of this to the officer, and I find out that this 40-ish-year-old guy has spent at least 30 of his years on Earth in federal prison for multiple violent offences. I think I'm seriously lucky to have escaped that unfazed. Number 3. I'll never forget that night. It was last year and I had just turned 25. I had been to a friend's wedding in another state and was returning by train. I reached the station just before 5 AM. It was freezing, and the temperature had just hit 4 degrees. All I could think about was getting home fast so that I could sleep for hours after being tired from so many nights. I generally avoided travelling alone in the dark because I found it impossible to wait at the station until sunrise, because an hour seemed like a very long time to wait in the cold. So I took my phone out and requested an Uber. It only took a few minutes, and a man arrived who must have been in his late 50s or 60s with silver grey hair. He was big built and looked like quite a nice ordinary guy. But I was mistaken. After I'd got in and we'd been driving for nearly 15 to 20 minutes, I was looking out at the road ahead, and all that I could see were trees that were closely covered by fog, and that's when I noticed that this guy had been staring at me from the rearview mirror, and he didn't blink or look away when I looked at him. It had been over 2 minutes, and he was still staring. He had scary, droopy eyes. I was very uncomfortable at this point and used my scarf to cover half of my face, which was only covering my neck at this time. But this didn't stop him, and he suddenly started laughing like a maniac. He then said some words in another language, so I asked him to repeat as I couldn't understand. My heart was beating very fast.
So many people are dying.
He said that and began to laugh again. I was too afraid to ask him any questions. I stood there frozen, regretting why I didn't just wait at the station. My hands were shivering because I was trying to send a message to my friend, but my fingers couldn't type properly. He then turned around and faced me and asked me if I was married. I managed to speak nervously, "No," and then he said,
"You will repent."
With these words he started to speed up. My mind was going crazy. What the hell did he mean by that? Why would he even say that to me? I tried looking around to see if it would be a good idea to get out of the car, but it was still very dark and there weren't many other cars on the road. I'd only see about 2 or 3 cars every 5 to 10 minutes. And by this point I was pretty convinced that he was taking me to somewhere else. I was trembling with fear, and I was sure that he was going to attack me or do something worse. Suddenly he slows down, and he seemed to be talking to himself.
"People die. You die. She'll die."
Pointing to the empty seat. With those words he stopped the taxi right there and then, and asked me to get down, saying,
"We need fresh air, and the petrol is over."
He wasn't drunk, but he had clearly been hallucinating, as he kept babbling and looking to the empty seat for no reason. Arguing with him could have made him annoyed, so I decided not to do it until I got help. Now he was right in front of the car, but a car length's distance away from me, holding a lit torch, pointing it onto his neck and repeating,
"You will repent."
I was almost crying due to the fear, but running was impossible because I could have been run over by some other car due to the fog, and my mind was not working properly at this point. The thought of calling someone didn't occur to me until earlier, and now it was too risky, since this maniac was standing right there holding that torch and moving his head like some kind of possessed person. It felt like a scene from a horror movie, and his eyes appeared a lot bigger than normal because of the torchlight that illuminated his creepy and now serious face. He said something that I didn't understand, and I'm sure he was going to kill me or torment me before that, and I was extremely restless and started looking around for help. To my relief, there was a car passing by, and it stopped there looking at us, just standing in the middle of the road. This guy came running to me and asked me to get towards his car where his daughter was, who was actually my age. I opened the door and the insane cab driver ran back to his Uber and drove off in seconds. I was still breathing heavily when I told them what happened for the last 30 to 40 minutes. They told me that I was in the opposite direction of where I was heading to, and that it was not a safe area as many incidents with girls had happened there already. I was right. The driver was trying to take me somewhere else. They had sensed something was wrong by the way the maniac stood there holding the torch, and when they saw the light that showed my silhouette, they thought it looked really weird and had to check it out. Had they not stopped, I would not be alive to narrate this incident, and since that night, I've never travelled alone again in the dark. Number 4. I'm a female college student and live with my sister in her townhouse in a nice part of northwest Atlanta. She travels most weeks for work, so I'm alone most of the time with my dog. One night we went to the bars in Buckhead with my friend and returned home in an Uber around 1. I was sober and she was quite drunk. That's important. We go to see my friend who's a manager at a bar and prepare to head out. Whilst we're waiting for our driver, I see 2 guys eyeing us up, especially my friend who is obviously intoxicated. I just figured that they would be creepers from the bar next door, and paid no attention to them and went on my way. Once I get back, I go to sleep, and she stays downstairs watching TV. She wakes me up a few minutes later to complain about my dog acting weird and growling at the back deck right above the backyard. I figured it was a coyote, and she told me that she felt uneasy, and immediately the doorbell rings. It's a man claiming to be from Lyft, and that we left a charger in his car, and that we have to go collect it. Well, first of all, we took Uber, not Lyft. And secondly, this guy is a completely different race to that of which our driver was. My friend insists it's her cord, and to turn off the alarm so that we can go get it. But hell no. I know it's a trap. I say he's mistaken, and he insists on me opening the door so that he can go home after we collect the cable. After politely telling him to go away, he attempts to break the door down, so I yell at my friend to get a gun, whilst I go downstairs to get the alarm so that the police will come. I then realise that someone is also trying to break in through the back door, and haul my ass upstairs to find an empty gun case. My sister had hidden it when I had some legal and psychological issues, hence the soberness, and forgot to replace it. So we were trapped with no protection. After a few more terrifying minutes, they give up when they hear police sirens and take off towards the woods. I went back to the bar the next day to get my coat, and my friend told me that he saw the creepers as well, watching us and that they'd followed us back out to our car, but he didn't think enough of it to warn us. Later, he tells me that there have been reports of serial rape in the area around the bars targeting college girls. I can only imagine what would have happened if they'd have gotten to us. So dear serial rapists, I've got my gun back. Never return to my house again, because I've got bullets with your faces on it.